Good morning. This is Franklin Lee coming to you from Berkeley, California, and it's my greatest pleasure to have my video producer, Mr. Paul Wan, visiting from Hong Kong, and we've been doing music videos, but mostly on the lute for more than a decade now. And I wanted to do this very short introduction because I'm primarily a lute player, and picking up the classical guitar is really a very different experience for me. So by way of explanation, I want to say that I found the classical guitar to be the perfect place for my limited jazz repertoire to roost. Why jazz? Well, for one thing, jazz and classical music, and especially my concentration of Johann Sebastian Bach, have something in common. They're all about the movement of different voices in a piece of music. Voices move and they create harmony and counterpoints. And in the Baroque period, the harmony was relatively simple compared with even, for instance, the 19th century. Beethoven was the one who broke out and created what for them was extraordinarily complicated harmony. Jazz is essentially a different take on that, in the sense that a lot of jazz construction is built on the principle of substitution. You change the sharps and flats of a given chord progression, and you create different effects every time you play. I found that with what most people consider as jazz guitar is an instrument that's not quite the best instrument for expressing harmony and counterpoints. I'm talking about the archtop guitar, which is very popular, especially with rock musicians who like to post rhythm. But I've had the greatest pleasure to work with Hideo Kamimoto, father of guitar repair, and Hideo told me that the archtop guitar was an instrument used primarily to cut through a thick texture of brass in the jazz bands, the big bands of the 1920s through the beginning of the Second World War. And regardless of how low the action you make this instrument, meaning how low the strings are close to the fingerboard, it is something that's not as projecting as an acoustic instrument. And that's the reason why it came into its own when it was electrified. So, you see people playing the typical ES instruments of Gibson, such as Topaz. But I wanted to play my limited jazz repertoire on an acoustic instrument. And ultimately, I came back to one of the first instruments that I learned many, many years ago, the classical guitar. And I just wanted to say a few words about the guitars that I used in this series of videos, which I hope you will view. The classical guitars that I came across were primarily three instruments. Around, I think, the year 2000, I started thinking about sort of a do-it-all, one-stop classical guitar, and the Classical Guitar Society of San Francisco had a number of exhibitions with the best local luthiers. San Francisco has a long history of guitar building, but we're not going to go too much into that. In any case, so I went to several of these exhibitions, and after 3 of them, I ended up with Eric Monrad, who resides in Healdsburg, in wine country. And so it was well, it's this instrument right here. It's essentially a purpose-built instrument. And after that, I ran into Jeffrey Chin, who was my first guitar and lute teacher, and he introduced me to a then young man from Point Roberts, Washington, named Darren Hipner. And Hipner continues to build guitar today, and he continues to make them very affordable. He's had some bad press because there were times when he would build 30 or more guitars at the same time, but the one that that I found that was available is really a very nice instrument based on Andre Segovia's Hauser guitar. And on Hipner, I'm presenting only 2 pieces. Then I really felt that I didn't need any more guitars, but I went to a music store one time to just buy some strings, and there was a classical guitar, used one that they were selling, and that's this very instrument right here. I Googled the luthier, who was at that time in his late 80s, and he was a Madrid luthier. And not only that, but his name is Marcelino Lopez. He was of the Antonio Torres school, not the Ramirez school, and his guitars tend to be, shall we say, a little bit more in the feminine side of the scale. Very rich in overtones, but maybe not as in-your-face projecting as the Ramirez Contreras kind of guitars. And I was really beguiled by the story behind this instrument. The store told me that a woman came in with this guitar, and she said that her father had gone to Madrid and bought it personally from Maestro Marcelino, and kept it on a stand and played it every day and put it back on the stand. So when he passed, she decided that she would continue the tradition and let this guitar just be on the stand in the music room of her house. And then one day she decided she needed to move on, so she went down to the guitar store, and she was quite surprised at what they were willing to give her. So the guitar went on sale, and I checked Google, and I realized, oh, okay, so this guitar was way underpriced, and I also know that this particular music store is a specialist in bluegrass, so it's likely they don't want to keep this around. So I bought it, and so I had 3 guitars lying around, 3 classical guitars, and continued to play the lute. Didn't think of really doing anything with them until Paul told me that he planned a visit here, and we've always videotaped some music, and I thought, well, I should try to be a little bit different and do, okay, let's do classical guitar. And I was just at first experimenting, and then I realized the voicing, meaning the relationship between the different voices that you can play for a given piece, is really unsurpassed, and it really is the place where my jazz arrangements would be most comfortable, and hence I'm doing this program. There are a total of 10 videos, 10 songs, mostly American Songbook, but there is an emphasis on Bill Evans, whose music sounds just absolutely ravishing on the guitar. Anyway, it's for you to judge, and I hope it brings you some pleasure, and thank you for listening.